Hi everyone and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I'm going to create Cleo De Nile for you, and she was very highly requested, so I hope you're going to enjoy this tutorial. Don't forget, if you haven't already seen my other Monster High cakes, you can click on any of the pictures you see on screen now to watch their tutorials. Cleo is part of my Monster High cake series, so don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see all the tutorials as I release them. You guys have been incredibly supportive watching and following my Monster High playlist, and as a thank you I'm going to be giving away 3 Claudine Wolf dolls. So if you'd like to have one of these dolls, drop me a line in the comments section below and let me know why you'd like to have one. And on the 1st of September 2014 I'm going to choose 3 of your responses, and then I'll be in contact to post you out your doll to wherever you are in the world. So good luck and let's get started. I have here my Cleo De Nile template, and you can get a copy of this in the description box below. I've also got a 10-inch square cake today. I've got my fondant roller, a sharp knife, a pair of scissors, my offset spatula and my X-Acto blade. I'll be using a few fluffy brushes as well as another paintbrush with some water. I've got some very dark chocolate brown fondant for the base of Cleo's hair, as well as 2 other shades of brown fondant. I've got some skin toned fondant as well as a nice piece of white. I've got some black, red, purple, light blue and another tiny little piece of white fondant. I've also got these sugar beads that I'll be using today. I've got some in light blue and gold, and I'll also be using some gold, purple and blue petal dust. I also have my chocolate frosting as well as some dark chocolate ganache. And I've got my board prepared, which I've decorated with a nice Cleo De Nile pattern. So the first thing I'm going to do is fill the centre of my cake with a nice layer of my chocolate frosting. The template for Cleo prints off across 2 sheets of A4 paper, and all you need to do is cut around both images and then join both sides of Cleo's face together with a little bit of tape, and then you'll have the correct size template for a 10-inch cake. As you can see now, I've placed my template at the very top of my cake, and this is because I want to lengthen each side of Cleo's hair. Then using my knife, I'm going to carefully cut all the way around the template, making sure the knife is nice and vertical at all times. Once I've gone all the way around, I'm going to remove the excess cake. With this cake, I'm going to make Cleo's face a little lower than the height of her hair, so I've removed that part of the template. And using my knife, I'm going to insert it into the cake about 1 centimetre deep and cut all the way around the inside of Cleo's hairline. And then I'm going to create a series of diagonal cuts in this face section. Then using my offset spatula, I'm going to carefully insert it from the front of the cake about 1 centimetre deep and scoop out all of these little pieces. At this stage, I'm going to cover my cake with a nice layer of my chocolate ganache, making sure to get into all of the edges that I've created for the face section. The chocolate ganache is going to act as a crumb coat, as well as providing some extra flavour and a nice base for the fondant to stick to. Once the cake is completely covered, I'm going to let it sit in the fridge for about 15 minutes to set. Once I remove the cake from the fridge, the ganache is firm to the touch, but I need to smooth it out nicely. So using some boiling water and my offset spatula, I heat up the spatula in the boiling water, wipe off any excess water on a paper towel, and smooth over the entire surface of the cake. Since I've covered the cake with the chocolate ganache, the template section of Cleo's face is a little bit too big to fit into the cavity, so I'm just going to trim it down a little bit so it fits nicely into the space. I'm going to create a little raised nose for Cleo, so I'm just going to take a tiny little bowl of fondant and shape it into a little nose, using the template as a guide to get the correct shape. And I'm going to make a mark with my X-Acto blade with the template on top of the cake to position it in the correct spot. Once I've rolled out my fondant for her face to about 2 to 3 mil thick, I cut around the template, making sure I've got enough to cover the front of the cake, and gently drape it over the top of the cake. Then I can start smoothing it into the edges and around her nose and down the front of her face, trimming off the excess at the front and sides of her face. Because I can't use a cake smoother on this cake, I'm going to use a little ball of fondant to smooth over the top of her face. I'm going to start working on Cleo's hair now, and it's a lot easier if I work on it in sections. So I'm just going to divide the template into 3 parts. And once I've rolled out my chocolate brown fondant, I'm going to use each section of the template to cut out Cleo's hair. Always remember to leave enough fondant to cover the sides of the cake. Using the lighter 2 shades of brown fondant now, I'm just going to cut out some streaks, which will help to give Cleo's hair a bit of a tonal effect. Feel free to add as many of these as you like. I'm going to now start work on Cleo's gold headband as well as the golden streaks in her hair. So just using my white fondant, I'm going to roll out some snakes using the template as a guide to get the correct shape for these pieces. Once I've rolled out all of my little snakes, I'm going to cover them using my gold petal dust. And now I can attach them to the cake using a little bit of water to adhere them. Sometimes when you're working with gold petal dust, you can easily get some smudged on the cake, but it's quite easy to remove using a clean, damp sponge or tissue. Using the back of my paintbrush, I'm going to press a series of holes into Cleo's headband and then wet the holes with a little bit of water. This will help the little sugar beads to sit nicely in the headband without rolling off. For Cleo's eyes, I've cut them out of the template and popped them on some white fondant. Once I've cut the eyes out of the fondant, I'm just going to reserve 2 little balls of white fondant as well as 2 tiny triangles, which I'll later use as the reflections in her eyes. And then trimming the template down a little further so that I'm just left with the blue section of her eyes, I'm going to cut that out of the fondant and start building up her eyes, adhering each piece of fondant together, using a little bit of black for the pupils and then adding the white reflections. I need to cut all the way around the very edge of the eyelashes on the template and then cut them out of the black fondant. Now I need to make a series of cuts into the fondant to create each individual eyelash. Cleo's eyeshadow is created in exactly the same way by cutting out the template and then cutting out the fondant. Before I start assembling her features, I'm going to transfer the cake onto my cake board, and then I'm going to use my template as a guide so that I can position the eyes in the correct spot and start adding her eyelashes, eyeshadow and eyebrows to the cake. I'm going to add a little bit of depth to Cleo's eyes by using my blue petal dust and gently dusting a little bit over her eyes, as well as using my purple petal dust to soften up the look of her eyeshadow. The last thing to make is of course Cleo's lips, which I do by rolling some fondant and patting it down over the top of the template to get the correct shape for her bottom lip. For the top lip, I roll out 2 little balls, tapering them out on the edge. And then I'm going to cover the top lips with a very thin piece of red fondant, trim off the excess and reform it back into a nice shape before adding it to the cake. The finishing touches I added was the blue sugar bead to her cheek, as well as some nice gold dangly earrings. So guys, I hope you enjoyed my tutorial of Cleo De Nile. If you did, don't forget to give it a like and share it with your friends. I love to hear from you and read all your comments, so drop me a line in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see all my creative cake tutorials as I release them. And as always, thanks for watching.